Hey guys, Friday video 2. This is the grammar video. They're pretty boring. I'm sorry, grammar is hard to make exciting, but I am going to try to make it as easy as possible, and we're only going to cover 2 skills today. That's passive and active voice and comma splices, and a little bit of fused sentences. So I created this giant list of things that may help you, maybe not. Just choose whatever you have the most trouble with. That's honestly the best way to identify grammar, especially if I've commented on your papers and I say you need to work specifically on like comma splices or run-on sentences, okay? And run-on sentences and fused sentences are the same thing. So I will put this online, but for the time being, we are only going to look at these 2 columns here, and then I have a separate worksheet for active and passive voice. Okay, so comma splice. What the heck's a comma splice? So an independent clause is something that contains a subject, a verb, and a complete thought, and normally that complete thought is an object. So an example would be, although we don't agree, we still had a good conversation. These are basic sentences, okay? If you're missing one of those parts, it's normally a fragment. All right, because he came to the party, period. This would be a fragment because it doesn't complete a sentence. It might be missing a subject or it might be missing a verb, but most of the fragments that you'll see or that you may write will be something like incomplete thoughts. All right, so now we know what an independent clause is. A comma splice, then, is when 2 independent clauses are separated by nothing more than a comma. So, for example, he bought a shirt yesterday, comma, he didn't like it. What is one way that you would fix this sentence? So comma splices are bad. Don't use them in your writing. A couple of years ago, some students thought you should put comma splices in your writing, and I was like, okay, fundamentally we have an issue. So comma splices are something you should avoid. It deals with issues of clarity. I don't make these rules like I've mentioned many times before with citations and with grammar, but I'm just trying to train you in the way of comma splices. So avoid these. What would you do? What's the easiest fix? The easiest fix for me is just making them 2 separate sentences. He bought a shirt yesterday, period. He didn't like it, period. That's one of the easiest ways. Another way to fix it is to add a coordinating conjunction. So a coordinating conjunction, there are 7 of them, and you might have heard of fanboys. Fanboys is an acronym for the 7 coordinating conjunctions, and they are, let me type them down here real quick, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So FANBOYS. You get the picture. These are the 7 coordinating conjunctions. And what you can do if you have a comma splice is you can just simply keep the comma and add a coordinating conjunction. So which one would be the most appropriate here? He bought a shirt yesterday, probably but he didn't like it because it's signaling a contrast, or and would work as well. Something like yet or nor wouldn't really work here. So most of you are native English speakers. You can kind of hear the differences, and all of the rest of you who may not be English, may not be your first language, you're advanced enough that you can understand the relationship between like something that's different, like or so. Okay, so period is the first way to fix a comma splice. The second way is add a coordinating conjunction and keep the comma. The third way is to have a semicolon in place of the comma. Semicolons can only be used between 2 independent clauses. They cannot be used like colons, okay? So semicolon. The fourth way and the final way is to use a colon. I would avoid using colons unless you have mastered them already, or you have more of a, or like you're in a grammar class that actually focuses or features grammar. But for the sake of this course, where I'm looking at your content a lot more than your grammar, shy away from colons as they tend to trip people up, okay? So, again, period, easiest way. Second way would be a comma plus a coordinating conjunction, one of the 7, or have a semicolon. All right. So a run-on sentence or a fused sentence is kind of the reverse of a comma splice. So again, you have an independent clause, then you have a coordinating conjunction, one of the 7, and you have another independent clause. That's one way you can create a run-on sentence. And again, these are bad. We don't want to create them. We want to avoid them. The second way is just having 2 independent clauses with no punctuation or coordinating conjunctions between them. So examples here. We went grocery shopping yesterday and I found some really good deals. So our first subject is we. Our second subject is, verb. Our first verb is went. And does it complete a thought? We went grocery shopping yesterday. Yes. So here's our first independent clause. The second subject is I. The second verb is found. Does it complete a thought? I found some really good deals. Yes. So these are 2 independent clauses, and they are only conjoined with the word and. Here, this counts as a run-on sentence. So what we would need to do is simply add a comma. Because, again, the ways that you separate 2 independent clauses are add a period, or add a comma and a coordinating conjunction, or a semicolon, or a colon. Okay, so there are 4 ways. We're focusing on 3 of the 4. So this would be correct, all right? You could put a period and take out the word and. You could also have a semicolon. The other way that you might see a run-on sentence, or might write one, is we went grocery shopping yesterday. I found some really good deals. So here, this one's probably more obvious. That's the simplest fix, just to add a period. You can also do this fix, a comma plus a coordinating conjunction, or even this, okay? So that's comma splices and run-on sentences. I have a few sentences here, and we'll only do like 1 or 2 because we need to move on to passive and active voice. So let's do this one. It's a little tricky. The New York Times is a good resource for WVU students because it is free for them to use. So is this correct? If it's not correct, how could we make it correct? So the first thing is, how many independent clauses do you have in this sentence? The New York Times, so we have subject is, verb, a good resource for WVU students. So this is all correct. This is an independent clause because it is free for them to use. So because, I think, is this a coordinating conjunction, one of the 7, fanboys? The B in fanboy stands for but, not because. So this is not a coordinating conjunction. So we do not need a comma here. It's kind of in a similar way, if we change the sentence around to because it is free for them to use, and then we have this section here. If we can change it around like this, it's a dependent clause is what we would call this. Notice that when you do change it around, you have the comma here. Because this is an introductory clause, so there's a natural pause or a breath here, we put a comma there. However, when you switch it around, you don't need to add a comma because it's not a coordinating conjunction, okay? So that one is a little tricky, but in order to correct it, we just took out the comma. So again, don't just throw commas in wherever you think they're appropriate. There are actually rules for this. Let's move up to this one. The movie is going to come out this weekend, and they're planning to watch it. So, how many independent clauses do we have? The movie, so we have 1 subject, is, verb, going to come out this weekend. Complete thought. They, subject, are planning, verb, to watch it. Another complete thought. So we have 2 independent clauses, and they're separated only with a coordinating conjunction. So this was almost exactly like our example for a run-on or fused sentence. The easiest way to fix it is to add a comma here, and now it's correct. Okay? So keep practicing with this. Please do notice your patterns of error, because once you notice your patterns of error, you can not only add information about them in your reflective cover memos in your midterm and also for your final, like I have an issue with comma splices and I've done X, Y, and Z in order to rectify that issue. But also you just produce better writing. And this is beyond just this class. So if you're writing to an admissions committee or a personal statement or a cover letter for a job application, the number one thing, like research has proven, that the number one thing that committees look at initially is grammar. So if you have bad grammar, it normally sends the message that you don't care about this, or that it's a sloppy application, etc. So we want to prevent that as well as much as we can. The second thing, active and passive voice. So I'll put this worksheet online as well. I have recommended to many of you to use active voice. Passive voice, as the worksheet says, is just it's less clear, and it sounds like you're really trying hard to sound, quote, like an academic. But academics mostly use active voice, especially in the humanities, because it promotes clarity. For example, active voice, in active voice sentences, the subject does the action. For example, Liz played the piano. So what's the action here? Well, the playing of the piano. Who is doing this action? Liz. And this is the subject of the sentence. We have subject, verb, object. Okay? Passive voice sentences, the subject receives the action. So, for example, the piano was played by Liz. So where's our verb? Was played. What was played? The piano. By whom? Liz. This now is the object of the sentence, the object in a prepositional statement, or phrase, sorry. So the piano is our subject, was played is our verb, and this is our prepositional phrase. So their reasoning here, which is totally what I agree with, but also like the humanities in general, the sentence that uses the active voice is stronger. Uses fewer words and clearly shows who performs the action. And this is this is the case for all like active voice examples. The sentence that uses the passive voice is weaker and less direct. It is, however, not incorrect to use the passive voice. That's why I'm saying it's mostly a style issue, but a lot of you are writing every sentence in passive voice, and the true doer of the verb is often left off in your sentences, or it is thrown at the end here. So again, we know who is doing the verb if you use active voice. Let's look at some examples. So Thomas feeds his dog. So we look for a verb, feeds. Okay, Thomas feeds his dog. So someone is feeding something. Who is doing the feeding? Thomas. Now we look and we say, what's the subject of the sentence? Thomas, subject, feeds, verb. The thing receiving the action is the object. So this would be active voice, and this is good. The reverse of this would be the dog is fed by Thomas. So you can kind of feel and hear the stilted nature of this. It's not a natural, and even conversational English. So your academic papers should be a little bit more formalized than just having a conversation with a friend. Like I've mentioned several times, don't use second person you. But it shouldn't be to the point where this is happening. Okay? It shouldn't be to the point where you're using passive voice in every sentence, and or even multiple times on the page, because the subject is unclear and it doesn't read or sound like a human is writing it. It sounds almost too mechanical. So what you would do to identify passive voice is you find the verb first. That always helps me. And then you think, who is doing the action? Who is doing this verb? Once you identify that, you put the person or thing that's doing the action, you put it first in the sentence. Then you put the verb, and then you complete the sentence, and don't change its meaning. You just restructure the sentence. The family went to the beach. So here, went is your verb. Who is going to the beach? The family. So we have subject, verb, and then prepositional phrase, to the beach. So this again is active voice, and that's great. I'll put this online so you can look at a few more examples if you have specific issues with active and passive voice. Other than that, that's it for the grammar video, and I will I've already opened writing response 6, so go ahead and do that. It's described in the last video. And other than that, have a great weekend, guys.